The police had a secret weapon against the mob boss Lucky Letterdo, his own son. The plan was that they would arrest the kid in a drug bust, and then bring in Lucky to negotiate for his release. But the only problem was the mob boss's son wasn't actually his real son. He'd adopted Vinny after finding him as an infant in the trunk of a dead man's car. Even though they weren't related by blood, Lucky had raised Vinny as if he were his own. And the boy had turned into a fine young man, well-liked around the neighborhood, and always ready to lend a hand to anyone in need. This made it all the more surprising when Vinny got involved with some shady characters who dealt in stolen goods and illegal substances. Lucky had tried to talk to his son about making good choices in life, but Vinny was adamant that it wasn't hurting anyone. That was until the cops got involved. Vinny found himself arrested and sent to jail. Lucky received the call and immediately knew what he had to do. He drove down to the nearest precinct and walked right up to the desk sergeant. "I hear there's been a little mistake," Lucky said. "I'm here to sort it out." The sergeant looked up at Lucky, recognizing the dangerous man before him. "You're the one who needs to explain what happened here, Leo," the sergeant replied. "He's my son. We can work something out," Lucky said. "Oh, we certainly can. How about 50 grand? The sergeant replied. Lucky took a seat, his mind racing. He could pay the money, but then other members of the family might be arrested too. No, he needed another option. "How about I come see him now? I'll take care of this myself," Lucky said. The sergeant nodded, leading the way to a holding cell where Vinny sat slumped in a chair. "I thought you were supposed to protect me," Vinny said angrily as his father approached. "That was never part of the deal, Vinny," Lucky replied softly. "What are you doing? What did you do?" "I told you I was fine. It was just a few stolen cameras and some pot." "Nobody was getting hurt," Vinny replied, "but they got you anyway. What am I supposed to do?" "I'm going to get you out, but you have to promise to stay away from that life. Understand?" Lucky said. Vinny looked at his feet. "Yeah, okay," he mumbled. Lucky went back to the sergeant and agreed to pay the full 50 grand. The entire family pitched in so they could get Vinny out. Back home, Lucky called the people who owned the cameras and offered to buy them back. On the surface, it seemed like everything had worked out fine, but Lucky couldn't shake this uneasy feeling. He decided to go see the sergeant and make sure Vinny was truly safe. The cop looked surprised to see Lucky, but quickly ushered him into his office. "Everything okay?" Lucky asked. Yeah, just making sure my son is going to be okay," the sergeant replied. "I paid the money, didn't I? What more do you want?" "Just wanted to make sure you weren't taking anything else from me, like my son," Lucky said, trying to keep his voice level. "Don't worry, I wouldn't dream of it," the sergeant replied, closing a file on his desk. Lucky nodded slowly. "Good," he said. Just then, the door to the office burst open, and the sergeant's partner rushed in. "Sarge, you gotta see this," the officer said urgently. "What is it?" the sergeant asked. "It's the cameras, the ones that were stolen, right?" "They're all over the news," the officer replied. "What do you mean? What's on the news?" Lucky asked. The officer pointed to the TV set in the corner of the room. On the screen, they saw a news anchor reporting on a series of recent robberies in the city. The criminals were still at large. The last scene showed the front of Vinny's house. Someone had broken in while the family was out, stealing all of their expensive electronics. The newscaster announced that the police believed the robberies were connected and that the investigation was ongoing. Lucky felt his face grow hot with shame. His son had been right. He hadn't protected him. He'd even paid the people who had hurt him. What kind of father was he? Lucky raced home, his mind filled with worry. Had Vinny been targeted because of who his father was? Would he ever be safe? When he got home, he found the front door kicked in and the house ransacked. But there was no sign of Vinny. Was he out with friends? Had someone hurt him? Lucky's heart pounded in his chest. He needed to find his son to make sure he was okay. He dialed Vinny's number, but it went straight to voicemail. Lucky kept calling, but there was no answer. Finally, he got a hold of one of Vinny's friends. "Hey man, where's Vinny?" Lucky asked. "Oh, I don't know," the friend replied. "We were just hanging out, but he disappeared." "I think he was in a hurry." Lucky could hear the fear in his son's voice. "Did you see where he went?" "Did he say anything?" Lucky pressed. "No, nothing. I'm sorry," the friend replied. "It's okay." "Thanks anyway," Lucky said, hanging up the phone. He knew his son had gotten into trouble before, but this was different. There was something serious going on, and he needed to find Vinny before it was too late. Suddenly he remembered the news report about the other robberies. Had someone broken into his house because of who he was? Was Vinny being targeted because of his connection to the mob? If that was the case, then he needed to get help from his crew. Maybe they could offer some protection, or perhaps even figure out who was behind this. Lucky reached out to his most trusted men, explaining the situation. Vinny's been taken. Boys, I need your help to find him. Whoever did this, I want you to find them and make sure it doesn't happen again. Lucky said, his voice shaking with anger. His crew nodded their heads in agreement. They knew better than to question Lucky's orders. They spread out across the city, searching for any clues as to where Vinny might be. Meanwhile, Lucky stayed at home, pacing back and forth. He couldn't understand why someone would target his son. Sure, he was involved in some shady stuff, but he'd never hurt anyone. Then it hit him. Was this a setup? Had someone lured Vinny away with the promise of more drugs or money? If so, then they had tricked him. But who would do such a thing? Why? As the hours passed, Lucky grew more and more worried. He hadn't heard from his crew, and he still hadn't found Vinny. What if he was being held somewhere? What if he was in danger? Suddenly his phone rang. He jumped, startled by the sound. It was one of his crew. "Boss, we got something," the voice said. "Where are you?" Lucky asked. "We're at this abandoned warehouse on the docks. Come here fast," the voice replied. Lucky didn't waste any time. He jumped in his car and raced to the warehouse. When he arrived, he saw the rest of his crew gathered around. "Any sign of Vinny?" he asked, rushing to catch his breath. "Not yet, boss," one of the men replied. "But we found this," another said, holding up a pair of sneakers. It was clear that whoever had taken Vinny had done so roughly. They hadn't meant to hurt him, but they had left these behind. Lucky felt a surge of determination. He would find his son no matter what. To be continued.